In July of 2009, I was running for mayor of the city of Atlanta, which had been my dream since I was 13 years old. But the bad part is I was losing. And I don't mean regular losing. I mean I wasn't in first place, second place. I flip-flopped between last and third place. And as one of my friends told me, "You're super losing." I didn't really understand what that hip term meant at the time. But I knew it was bad. And so I had what all politicians have. I had the high-priced political consultants, and we had an emergency meeting, and they called me into the room to inform me what I should do to stop super losing. They said, "We have a plan. We're going to have you get out and see people more. We're going to have you go to 150 houses a day, 200 if you can do it after fundraising. We're going to have you knock on doors. The people need to see you." And I remember sitting there thinking, this is what I'm paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for? But since I was losing, I did it. So I got out and I started going to door after door. I had my comments down. 3 minutes, I'd walk up, knock, knock, knock. "Hello, I'm Kasim Reed. I'm a Georgia state senator, and I'd like to be your mayor." On one hot day in July, though, I was in a neighborhood in Atlanta called Mechanicsville. It isn't very far from where City Hall is. So I knocked on this door. I had my spiel down. "Hello, I'm Kasim Reed. I'm a Georgia state senator, and I'd like to be your mayor. May I talk to you about the campaign?" And this wonderful old woman with a warm face looked at me through a door that had steel bars on it. She cracked the door. She flung the door open. She looked at me and she said, "Come on in, baby." And so I'm sweating, because it was July in Atlanta. And I walk in, and she said, "You want something to drink?" I was thirsty, so I said yes. I remember the house because she had plastic-covered sofas in her good living room, which reminded me of my grandma. And then she poured me a massive cup, in a green Tupperware cup of orange Kool-Aid, which I loved. So I stood in the kitchen just enjoying this orange Kool-Aid, and then I remembered, you can only be here for 3 minutes. So she sat me down. She said, "Come on over here, baby. Talk to me. Tell me why you think you should be Mayor Kashif." I said, "It's Kasim, but it's okay." And I said, "Atlanta is the cradle of the civil rights movement. We have the third largest concentration of Fortune 500 businesses. We have the busiest passenger airport in the world. We have wonderful restaurants, and I believe that I can make the city stronger." And she looked at me as if I was a Martian. I mean, just none of this was getting through. I felt terrible. And on top of that, I had been there 12 minutes. She grabbed my hand. She said, "Come here, baby. Let me show the Atlanta that I know." She took me out her door and she pointed at a pool across the way. And in that pool were about 4 to 5 young boys, and they were literally shooting dice in a pool that should have been filled with water. If you looked left, you saw a gazebo that used to be used by people for picnics that was full of guys playing music that was way too loud with gang graffiti on the gazebos. She said, "That's the Atlanta that I know, baby." She said, "Let me tell you something else." She said, "I'm a pretty good cook myself, so I don't go to the restaurants you're talking about. And if I was going to go to restaurants, I'd need to take the bus, and I don't really feel safe going out at night right now." And she said, "That airport that you all are always talking about, baby, I don't fly. Now, you have a nice day." And then that steel door hit, bam! And I was like, I spent 15 minutes. I don't even think I got the vote, and I really don't think she liked me. But I changed that day, because what I understood from that visit with Miss Davis was that until you see a city how people who are most in need of help see it, you're never going to reach them. And I was never the same. Well, as fate would have it, I actually won that election. Came from way behind, and I won by 714 votes. Not by a big margin, but when you were losing like I was losing, winning is okay. So I get sworn in as mayor. It's a wonderful day in the city of Atlanta. And then I get taken back to my office. As soon as I sit down, I'm given a stack of documents. The first act I did within my first hour was to sign a tax anticipation note loan for several $1,000,000 so that the city's payroll would not bounce. That's what we needed to do. And I thought about Miss Davis and that green cup and going back to reclaim that pool, and I said it's going to have to wait. But that I was going back to Mrs. Davis in that pool. I'll tell you this. I called my team together. I said, what are we going to do? They said, well, Mayor, we really don't see any money, but we have pension costs of $110 million that have grown from about $50 million. If we could get a major pension reform deal, then we could probably be able to do some of the things that you dreamed about. I said, okay. I called my team together. I said, that's exactly what we're going to do. My team came in and said, no, you're not. You only got elected by 714 votes, and labor was essential to your election. I said, you all, we've got to call everybody together and explain it. Well, let me tell you what happened. We went from spending $110 million on pension costs to spending about $83 million. We had every single labor union at the table. We had the private sector at the table. We raised $1.7 million to give us the best guidance on how to do it. And over the next 10 years, we'll save $270 million in cash. And over the next 30 years, we'll save $500 million in cash. We took those savings. We hired 800 police officers. Violent crime in the city of Atlanta is down 18%. We've grown cash reserves, which were $7.4 million on that day, to $126.9 million in 39 months in the city of Atlanta. So the city isn't broke anymore. And I didn't forget about Miss Davis and Mechanicsville and Dunbar Recreation Center. We opened up every single recreation center in the city of Atlanta when 2/3 of them had been shut when I took office. And we did go back to Mechanicsville. And because of the partnership that we were able to implement, $5 million in private philanthropy has come, and we have gone from seeing 100 kids a day who we're helping to 1,500 kids every single day. Folks, cities are where hope meets the street. That's what that lady taught me that day. And the reason that I wanted to visit with you all and have a conversation with you all is because cities are ascendant. And if you don't want to spend your whole life waiting to change something, I happen to believe that you ought to be in cities. We can talk all day about the tough times that we have with the lack of bipartisanship at the federal level, not just in the United States, but large governments moving slowly around the world. You see, I don't need 218 votes in Congress, or I don't need 91 votes in the Georgia legislature to move. I need 8 votes on the Atlanta City Council to make change. That's why I want you to be involved in cities. You pick an issue: childhood obesity, adult literacy, immigration, and we are dealing with those issues head on at cities. And the world has already voted. For the first time in recorded history, 50% of the world's population lives in cities. Over the next 20 years, that number will rise to 60%. And over the next 20 years after that, it will rise to 70%. In America, 80% of our GDP is generated in cities. So the bottom line is this: governments have to be open to private talent and extraordinary ideas. What I've learned from running the city of Atlanta and delivering concrete results is if you open up your government to talent and merit and let it come in, whether it's in the private sector or NGOs, you can make transformational change faster than you typically can at the federal level. Just look at what we could do in the 50 leading metros in the United States of America if our talent pours into them instead of focusing on national governmental issues. Cities is where hope meets the street, you all. So because of the strength of the city's finances, we were able to bring back something called the Atlanta Senior Citizens Ball. And we have thousands of wonderful seniors who put on their best clothing, wonderful gowns. And my mother made me change the name from the Senior Citizens Ball to the Forever Young Ball because she didn't like being called a senior. So she pulled rank on me. So it's now the Forever Young Ball. But about 2 years ago, you all, about 2 years ago, I actually saw Mrs. Davis coming into the ball in a lovely gown. And I actually walked up to her, and she gave me a hug. She said, "Hey, baby." I said, "How am I doing?" She said, "You're doing okay, and we're doing okay. And you fill that pool." I looked at her, choked up a bit, and watched her walk off. And I wondered, did she know that on that moment on her porch so many months ago, that she helped to make a mayor and that she changed this city? I hope she knows now. Thank you.